Alan, I'm intrigued. What story did you tell the girl that prompted this literary avenue?
Well, I thought about it for a minute or two, and I thought, I've got to tell a story which I remember vividly. And it was when I was making a book at Wembley. It was a night they had a final because there was about 4,000 people there, which was a big crowd for Wembley, especially Wembley being so vast. And I remember even the name of the dog. It was a dog called Whaley Flash. It was owned and trained by a guy called Barry Silkman. Now, people might know Barry Silkman. At one time, he was a professional football player, played for Manchester City. One time, he was a double window or double glazing proprietor. One time, he was a dog trainer. And now today, he's a football manager. And he told me a story that he sold a player to Chelsea not that long ago, where he earned nearly £1 million out of it. Sorry, Barry, but I've got to tell the truth. The story I tell is when Barry was the trainer. Now, Barry had this dog called Whaley Flash, really could only run out of trap 1. If it was in trap 2, it was already not such a good thing. But he had this dog running out of trap 1. Whaley Flash was one of the slowest starters you could ever imagine on a dog track. And it came to this race, and they put the dogs into the traps, and the hare went round, the trap opened. And instead of it just coming out like 4 or 5 lengths behind, it slipped. And it lost another 2 or 3 lengths. And it went to the first bend at Wembley, probably 8 lengths behind the last dog. It must have seen at Wembley, through the railings, the hare going round basically the second bend as he was getting round the first bend. And instead of running round the track, he tried to cross the track and went straight into a lamppost. And the dog just stopped and fell down, never moved. Barry saw it from where he was standing on the other side with the pickup and started to run towards the dog. The dog still never moved. Barry got there, the race was now over. Barry got there and he looked down at the dog, and then all of a sudden Barry went down on his knees in front of the dog. And as I say, there might have been 4,000 people there, but you could hear a pin drop. Barry just on his knees looked at the dog, and I'm sure everybody in the track just looked at the dog. It didn't move. He put his arms underneath it like in a cradle to pick it up, and as he picked it up, the dog's legs fell all different ways. And the dog was dead. And Barry picked it up and started walking back to the kennels. And even to this day, I can hear Barry sobbing his heart out with the tears running down his face. And that was one of the most sort of, I don't know what the word is, but memorable things I've ever seen on a dog track, that there are humans and people did feel what Barry felt. The book I've written, basically, it is a sort of my life story, but it's not really about me so much. It's about the people that I've come across in the business. When I said to my father I want to go and become a bookmaker, he said to me, okay, he said, you've got to be a bookmaker, but you've got to remember that you're going to meet some characters, and you're going to meet the highest of the high and the lowest of the low. And I must tell you, I probably have. I remember going to Ascot when I was 18 years old with Joe Correll. The original Joe Correll took me to Ascot, and we were walking around Ascot, and a guy came up to him and we started talking, and Joe said to me, oh, this is Alan, this is Mr. Moore. And I shook hands with Mr. Moore. And when he walked away, I said, who's Mr. Moore? And he said, oh, he owns Littlewood's Pools. Oh, right, which was the way of gambling in those days. Then the next minute he comes over with a young lady. To me, she was a young lady, and introduced me and said to me, this is Lady Sassoon, which if you could go look at horse racing owners and trainers, they were the epitome. They were the number one owners in those days. And then he introduced me to a guy called Roy Green. And I said, oh, he was a nice guy. Who's Royal Green? He said, he's a gangster. He's probably got a gun in his pocket. He said, but these are the people you're going to meet. And there was, you know, and I don't know what it was, but in the years that I'm talking about, most people had nicknames. I said, we had a guy called the Swan. And why was he called the Swan? Well, he had the longest neck you've ever seen. Then there was a guy called Maury the Head. Maury the Head was as bald as you could ever imagine anybody to be. But this was before it was a popular thing to shave your hair. He was bald. Then there was a guy called Manchester George. Well, Manchester George, I do believe he actually was from Manchester, was the card sharp. Maury the Head and the Swan were diamond hoisters. They used to go into jewellers and put pieces of glass and take the diamonds away. And these are the people that I grew up with on the dog track. What an education I had. I think that was great.